Sam Harris, his moral framework is a cognitivist view where moral claims can be right or wrong, and his objective grounding is honestly quite a bit deeper than most cognitivist theories, I would say. It's grounded with literally just the well-being of conscious creatures. That's a really deep grounding. That's something that goes like it goes to the core of conscious creatures, you would say.
Right.
So it is I don't even know if there's a name for it, but he calls it just the moral landscape. But yeah, so basically there are right and wrong answers to questions of facts and values related to morality, and the right answer would be the well-being maximized answer. That would be morally right versus the well-being minimized as a whole. It's definitely a cognitivist view. It's kind of like a modification of utilitarianism in a way.
A little bit.
It's not necessarily hedonistic, like pleasure pain utilitarianism.
Well, and he specifically talks about it in the book. He specifically talks about that we're not talking about pleasure because pleasure arises other issues.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's sort of a modified utilitarianism. And I think it's a very reasonable view.
Right. And we talked about it last time, and I think my main issue at the time, not only that my basis of understanding was your basis of understanding,
which was a limited basis. Yeah.
So I had limited knowledge in that discussion. In combination, my other issue was the utility aspect. What?
Oh, the application of something like this.
The application.
Right.
And I think that's a valid concern. Well, here's why, and he kind of touched on it in the book. One of the common criticisms is moral imperialism.
Right.
And if we're going to say something is objectively true based on it, regardless of culture, it only comes down to the well-being of people. Who is deciding what well-being is good and what well-being is, what diminishes well-being? Can we really push these beliefs, these facts that we're going to call them, onto another culture?
Right.
And your main bring up with that was the extremes, which Sam Harris also did. The ones that are killing their citizens or what have you.
Right.
And he could say, well, that is objectively worse for those people. And therefore, if it is diminishing the well-being of those people, then it is objectively wrong.
Which I think is I like that. And the way he grounds... So he grounds his objective basis a little bit, back to what I was saying, a little bit deeper than most cognitivist theories do, by way of saying that we can determine it as objectively as we determine anything else in science.
Mm-hmm.
By way of...
This was fascinating. Okay. Sorry to cut you off, but what I'm saying is more important. And what I'm about to say is probably exactly what you were about to say, but therefore we're both important. But so what he goes on to say, and this is what I was missing from this when you were talking about it, is that we can make truth claims on nutrition, as an example. And just because I like this food and you like this food that's not the claim issue here. That's not the right or wrong. That's not the good for you versus bad for you. That's a preference. And that has no bearing on morality. Mm-hmm. What the difference is does something further your nutritional health or does it diminish it? And that's the distinction. So it's not about comparing two goods. It's about distinguishing between a good and a bad.
Yeah.
That's and I think that's when we talked about the last time, I kind of got hung up on that because we really fell into a rabbit hole of talking about, well, I've got this peak and you've got this peak, and maybe you're just missing out. And that might be true.
Right.
But I don't think Sam Harris was really focusing on trying to compare good well-beings. That wasn't the
No,
focus.
absolutely not.
And
No.
I think we got hung up on that. It was really interesting to hear him more nail down this bad versus good. What is better as opposed to bad, and not so much as what is the preferential direction of two good well-beings.
Yes. Yeah, that is. Yes, absolutely. That is something that I don't think I did really elaborate on the however many months ago that episode was when we were arguing about it.
Yeah, I think it was like 2 or 3 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the same way, and he also grounds the objectivity of there is the part of the important bit is differentiating a good from a bad.
Yeah.
That is the important bit. But how he links morality or how he links what is good and what is bad to human well-being,
Right.
like who's to really say my well-being has anything to do with what is truly the good and the bad,
Right.
right? The way he links it to, well, the simple way he does it at the beginning of the book is imagine the worst possible misery for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
In any way that you can use the word bad, that describes it.
Right.
That is bad. So if the opposite of it is good, which if anything better than that would be better than the worst possible misery, then it would have to be the opposite. The antithesis of it would be the good.
Yeah.
And since if anybody uses the word bad doesn't mean that, then we're just using totally different definitions of what bad means.
Right. Bad has to mean something. Is basically the point. It can't just be a floating nothing word.
Exactly. And
because at that point you might as well just say that you don't like it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the sort of simple way he grounds this objectivity. But even at that level, even if the entire world agreed upon that would be bad, we could probably say, all right, we've established an objective morality here. Somebody else diverting from it is probably just a bit mistaken.
Right.
But what that doesn't do is establish objectivity independent of mind.
Mm.
It's still a what would be considered a constructivist cognitive theory. It's constructed objectivity. But he goes a little bit further than that and says that we can say it's as objective as anything else we say in the world of science. So
right.
How he claims that is we can't actually say what is truly, unmovingly, ultimately objective at all.
Yeah.
In science. Because we might, for all we know, be a brain in a vat, and
Right.
relativity could just be constructed. So
Right.
what we have to do is lay down axiomatic presuppositions and then build objectivity on that presupposition, this axiom that is sort of default without questioning.
Yeah, he really did, and I appreciated this as somebody who was going in not opposed, but going in skeptical. I appreciated that he made it very clear that this is not to define what is moral for the end of to the end of time.
Yeah.
That's not the purpose. And he just like you said, he used scientific reason as that grounding. It is nothing in science is true forever necessarily.
Right.
And it is discovered and discussed with the understanding that this could evolve.
Exactly. And with the understanding, with the axiom of we aren't in a simulation, because there are axioms we have to just assume is true. So he relates that to morality in if we can make objective claims in science that are still resting upon an axiomatic presupposition, we can do the same thing with morality and say that given that pretty much anybody on planet Earth would say that the worst possible misery for everyone is bad, we can use that. That's our axiomatic presupposition. That's the default that we can just assume is true. And then we'll build from that.
Let me ask you this, because I'm gearing up to share a thing with you. We can talk about what maximal well-being is and what the worst possible well-being is. What do you think the components of well-being are necessarily?
Well, he even says in the book that whatever the highest point of well-being may not be, it certainly isn't something that we know and maybe can't know.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
I want to share something with you. I had seen this actually years ago, and I didn't think about it afterwards because it wasn't relevant at the time. But this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know if you've ever seen this before.
I've heard of that.
And I don't know if it's super relevant to this conversation, but I really liked it as a framework of defining well-being.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah, I have seen this before. So there's 5 layers of ground level essential needs ascending to lesser important needs. And it starts with physiological needs: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction.
Mm-hmm.
That is your base level, maximal importance needs.
Well, not only is it maximally important, what Maslow's hierarchy of needs also does is it tells you what you need. This is completely unrelated to the subject that we're talking about, but what it also does that's interesting is it lays down what you need before you can ascend. These are examples of the things you need to nail down before you can ascend to higher levels of well-being.
Okay.
You need food, water, shelter before you can, have, I don't know, other things. You have friendship, families, sense
Well,
of
let's
connection.
just list it off. So at the base level, we've got the physiological needs. One above that is safety needs: personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. So you would be saying that you first need your air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction before you can get something like your health.
Right.
Which I would agree.
Yeah.
And above the safety needs, we've got love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, and sense of connection. I have some opinions on that. I'll keep going just to finish it. Above that, we have esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom, and then self-actualization at the very top. Desire to become the most that one can be.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, those top 3, I think, could be a bit reordered.
You think?
Yeah. I don't think though. I think physiological and safety are in their right spots. I think self-actualization can honestly apply at the 3rd in place of love and belonging.
Yeah. The way I don't really know if I agree with what they're saying here. The desire to become the most that you can be. I think it's
That can honestly that could
be anything.
Any of them.
What I think of when I think of the self-actualization as the final step, it's more along the lines of, like some people would say, satisfying a creative need, or doing exactly what you want to do instead of what you need to do. As in, that's what I think. Like it's not that, I go to work every day to collect a paycheck, but now I'm doing this creative outlet as my occupation. I'm doing what I want to do for me more than I'm doing what I want to do because I need these other things.
Right.
That's why I would say it's at the top. Because
Okay.
you need these other things. And just like that, in order to truly be able to pursue those things, you need maybe not respect necessarily, but you need strength and freedom and self-esteem in order to achieve
Sure.
higher goals,
Right.
which puts it firmly at the top.
So self-actualization, if it's interpreted in that way, then yeah, I think it should be at the top. So yeah, but really, I think the important ones, that are pretty spot on, I believe, is this physiological needs and safety needs.
Right.
And love and belonging, community is extremely important.
Right.
Having people, I mean, there's a reason solitary confinement is the worst place you could be in a prison.
Right.
Right? Being isolated is not good for a human at all. So that being above safety needs in level 3, I think maybe it is in a good spot because it is extremely important.
Well, the only reason I brought this up is not that this as a whole is necessarily pertinent, but what I think is interesting is when we're talking about what is well-being, it's the thing that takes away from these qualities, which is what I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a good way. When you say what is well-being, you can frame it as the thing that reduces this hierarchy of needs. But you could also say, well, what's the opposite of well-being?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be easy. Pain, death,
Right.
Suffering, just that. And then just kind of reverse those. And then that's what you get. So maybe the quest for well-being is get the basics, but not so much run toward a furtherment of well-being, but run further away from what diminishes well-being.
Right. Which I think that idea is consistent with what Sam Harris was talking about.
Right.
Because it wasn't necessarily about, I already said this, but the purpose wasn't necessarily about how to have a higher sense of well-being than you previously did. That was definitely touched upon, but more about how do we know what is the opposite, and how do we establish confidently and objectively what is counterproductive.